Hello everyone and welcome to QualityOldHomm. Today we are making another tier list, this time from Conflux unit roster. In Heroes of Might and Magic 3, Horn of the Abyss expansion, and the tier list will be based on campaign setting mostly, and also in addition to the unit's fighting capabilities, also its requirements and costs will be taken into consideration. And furthermore, in the background there is my How Good Is series affecting the results, so the unit's rank here depends on how well it performed in those tests. But without further ado, let's begin. So first we have tier 1 unupgraded pixies. The unit itself is rather nice. It has flying, it's relatively fast, and the growth is rather nice. However, it's really squishy, so if one sneezes towards it, it tends to suffer casualties. So that's a kind of a minus, and because of that minus, I think it deserves a place only in B tier. Of course, if one considers that tier 1 units are often used in creeping and gathering those mines and resources and so on and so forth, I think it actually in that situation could be in low A tier. But the unit's viability decreases as the scenario progresses, and I think in the end battles containing tier 7 creatures as well, the utility of these is quite small. So I think B tier is kind of a compromise between these two. Then we have the upgraded version Sprite, and of course the squishiness aspect affects these as well. However, they have non-retaliation attack and somewhat greater speed as pixies, and of course they can fly. So that's rather relatively high speed, no retaliation, and high growth is rather nice combination. And in my opinion, if the enemy has no shooters, these units can actually dominate the early game battlefield quite nicely. Of course, they will fall out as well in the later stages of the game. Then again, most of tier 1 units will. But of course, the low amount of hit points affects these quite a bit. But still, the no retaliation keeps them viable even in the late game, and I think they deserve a place in solid A tier. And the reason why they are not in S tier is that their value decreases somewhat when the scenario progresses. Then we have air elementals, and actually I think Conflux overall has kind of it has two categories. Some units are really good and some units are really bad. And well, that affects mostly from tier 2 to tier 5, and that's the reason behind that is that the elementals are designed to be somewhat equal in the original game. And that of course affects very positively air elementals. I mean, tier 2 unit, easy to get, and they do pack quite a punch, especially if you can use Bless on them. So, and these guys are relatively fast, so it's rather nice, and I think it deserves a place in strongest end of B tier. I mean, the unit is surprisingly effective in melee, and especially if you take the speed into account for tier 2 unit, I mean, we're wondering if it should be on the weaker A tier, but I think it will go to strong B tier. And then we have the upgraded version Storm Elemental. I think this is quite often ranked as the best tier 2 unit in the game, and I agree. So the unit has really nice ranged attack, and it can dish out damage, especially with some buffs. Then again, I think it actually loses some of its melee capabilities as it's upgraded, so it receives ranged unit penalty in melee. So that kind of lowers its score a bit. Then again, the speed is rather nice, it can cast buffs, and so on and so forth. So I think it clearly deserves a place here in the two uppermost echelons here. I'm just wondering, should it be weak S or strong A? Let's put it into weak S, at least for now. Perhaps it will drop to strong A, but at least for now in weak S. Then we have water elementals. I mean, they kind of should benefit from this elemental structure of Conflux, but I somehow find that I don't like the unit too much. It feels slow, it feels clunky as it takes 2 hexes. I guess it can do in fight relatively okay, but still, I don't know. I just don't like it. Perhaps this is a bit of evaluation made by gut feeling or something like that, but I will give it only C tier. I don't really like the unit that much. Yeah, because mostly it's because the slow speed, I think. But yeah, only C tier for me. And then we have ice elementals. I guess for tier 3 units they are decent enough, kind of okay-ish unit, but I would, for instance, take Grand Elves rather than these ones. Or perhaps even Royal Griffins instead of these ones. So they're not that great, of course. The range attack is rather nice, and especially if you can bless the ice elementals, that's really nice. They can cast that protection from water, which is always nice. Then again, they have some weaknesses for certain spells and so on and so forth, and they lose some of the melee capabilities compared to water elementals. So I think for these guys I will give only weak B tier. And as the unit is large in size, meaning 2 hexes, it's relatively difficult to protect it in larger battles. So yeah, I think only B tier, and perhaps and in the lower end of B tier. Then we have fire elemental, and now the elementals are beginning to suffer from that. Clearly suffer from that. That all elementals should strive to be equal, or should be equal stats-wise, and so on and so forth. I was thinking that I will most definitely give them D tier, but then again, Conflux unit roster has quite a bit worse units as well, so I think the worst units are so bad that I need to give these guys a weak C tier. I mean, they are bad. They take quite a beating, and, well, of course, a bit of a saving grace is that they are tier 4, but I mean, if they go to face, for instance, Crusaders, they get beaten. I mean, some tier 3s will beat them quite nicely, in my opinion. So, yeah, I think I'm being generous as putting them to the lower end of C tier. And in the How Good Is testing, they are among the worst performers, but not the worst of the worst. And of course, perhaps one of their saving graces is that the upgraded version Energy Elemental is at least somewhat improved related to them. So for Energy Elementals, I think I will give a B tier, somewhere around here. And even though they are not that good in battle, they do have those special abilities. They can cast protection from fire. They move through teleport, so walls or obstacles won't stop them. And their speed, well, for tier 4 creature is not excellent, but nonetheless quite nice. So the utility of energy elementals is quite a bit higher than that of fire elementals. And because of that, I think they deserve a place in B tier. And then we move to the worst of the worst. Earth elementals. Yeah. I mean, they are a good contender for the worst unit of the entire game. well, perhaps Walking Dead can do a bit better at that department. So the Earth Elementals can't do even that properly. Yeah, to the lowest end of D tier, somewhere around here. And things are not much improved with Magma Elementals. They, well, get a slight buff to speed, but overall I think both of these guys, their fighting capabilities for tier 5 units is just abysmal. The units is rather slow, they are not even tanky enough to do something. For example, if one compares to Dendroids. The Dendroids are relatively slow, but if they can catch an enemy, they can actually hit quite hard. But in my opinion, these guys cannot do even that. So yeah, most definitely both of these deserve a place in D tier, and I would put Earth Elementals in E tier if I had one. Then we have Psychic Elementals. As I made a tier list from tier 6 units, I received some criticism that I'm valuing these units too highly. Then again, at least in the how good is testing, the units tend to perform rather well. Well, that's against AI, so that might explain something. But still, I think that AoE attack, or attacking all around the unit, is really nice. Though, I think it comes a bit at the cost of hit points. Since the 75 hit points for Psychic Elementals is rather small for tier 6 units. And that's a kind of negative factor for them. And then they have immunity to some spells, mind spells. So, and of course the requirements are, I guess, somewhat high. Mage Guild, all tier 2, 3, 4, 5 dwellings. So yeah, I think I will give them a place in B tier. Well, I guess these guys did not receive that much criticism, but the rating I gave for these guys, and perhaps the rating I will give them here, might receive some criticism. So Magic Elementals, immunity to magic, quite nice speed, still quite squishy, but that attack all around of the units and no retaliation for the enemy. I mean, that no retaliation and all around attack is just great for a unit that takes only 1 hex in space and is actually quite a bit faster than Hydras or Chaos Hydras. So I think I will actually give these guys a place in A+ tier. And the reason just is that, in my experience, they just do well in battle. Of course, it's a different story if you pit them against one creature. Then they cannot utilize their main ability that's damaging all creatures around them. So yeah, in one-on-one I would give them perhaps a B tier, but the area attack, in my opinion, deserves a place in A+. And then we have only tier 7 units left. First we have Firebird. And both Firebird and Phoenix did get quite a nerf in Horn of the Abyss compared to the Armageddon's Blade or Shadow of Death. So the unit growth was decreased from 4 to 3, and even that extra growth requires an additional dwelling. Furthermore, unit prices were increased quite significantly. The gold price for both of these was increased. But still, in my opinion, the unit does actually surprisingly well. So the breath attack, you can hit 2 hexes, and for unupgraded tier 7 creature, this thing is just fast. And I think it has utility even in endgame. Of course, in one-on-one and in cost-effectiveness tests, both Firebirds and Phoenixes will suffer. But in the campaign setting, the first mover advantage will grant you the possibility to cast the first spell, which is quite important. And furthermore, with these units you can actually snipe some of key elements of enemy army as you get the first mover advantage. or then you can just fly around the unit and guide it through the battlefield if the enemy has slow units and so on and so forth. So I think these guys do deserve a place in S tier, which I have to say is a bit surprising. My gut feeling was kind of to put them to somewhere A, B, somewhere around there, but then I checked again the results in the How Good Is testing and they are actually really solid. Surprisingly solid even. So clearly a place in S tier, in my opinion, even though perhaps not the highest end of S tier, but S tier nonetheless. And I guess you already guessed that Phoenix is going to the S tier as well. The fastest unit in the game, that's a bonus by itself, but also the breath attack, a bit higher stats than Firebirds. Of course, once again, these units don't do that well in cost efficiency or 1 versus 1, but the growth is a bit bigger, the unit is fast, and then there is that revival or resurrection for some of the stack. It's a bonus. I mean, in my opinion, it's a rather small bonus. The quality of the unit comes from other aspects than from that, but I mean, it can tie some enemies down and increase the utility of the unit a bit further. So clearly S tier, strong S tier for me. So here we have my view of Conflux units. Do you agree or disagree? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you like the video, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Have a great rest of the day. QualityOldHomm out.